Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for being here. I'm Ina Fried, Chief Technology Correspondent at Axios. I author our daily newsletter, AI Plus, that covers the field. If you don't get it, you can just go to axios.com/newsletters. All we ask for is an email. I'll be in your inbox every day.
It's a great newsletter, so.
And I paid him only a small fee for that. So in case, for the couple of you that don't know, to my right is Andrew Ng, one of the pioneers of this field that we are all talking so much about. So I'm really excited about this opportunity. I think we're going to take a few minutes to talk about where we are right now, and then also, so what do we do about that? What should we be doing as individuals, as society, to kind of adjust for the world that Andrew helped kickstart? So, to level set, obviously we've been talking about AI here in Davos for a couple of years. First it was ChatGPT. Now everyone's, suddenly talking agents, AI taking action on its own. Where do you think we are? Cut through the hype and tell us where you think we are in this moment.
I'm seeing more and more businesses get positive ROI. And so to those who are involved in large enterprises or startups or NGOs, this is an excellent time to build. Maybe to share a little bit of a broader landscape. Over the last few years, there's been a lot of buzz and hype and excitement about companies like OpenAI and Anthropic and Google's work on Gemini. And so I find that whenever there's a new technical innovation like AI, large language models, a lot of the hype and excitement is on the technology layer, like the foundation models or the semiconductors or the cloud companies. But even though a lot of the attention is there, the thing that'll be more relevant to most of you is not, do you want to spend $1 billion to compete with OpenAI? The thing that'll be more important to you is what are the applications you can build on top of it. A lot of the debates about ROI of AI is because so many billions of dollars have gone into training these foundation models, these large AI models, that people are actually wondering when will the payback come for them. But, and I hope there'll be a good answer to that. But it turns out that for you, if you're not in the business of training foundation models, because others have spent billions of dollars training these models, you can now get access to these models for cents or dollars or something and build really valuable applications on top. And so the ROI equation for people building applications actually looks really good, even though it still needs to be sorted out for the people building foundation models.
And so one of the things that I think would be, I get to spend all my time writing about AI, I get to spend my time talking. I get to spend all my time writing, reading about AI, trying out different tools. But most businesses, you're trying to do your day job. You're trying to figure out how I do it. And it feels like you're bombarded with constant announcements that, oh, we just did this thing and it changes everything. So last year it was chatbots, now it's agents. How should business leaders get started?
So a lot of the hype is driven by, whatever some company is trying to do to raise the next round of funding or do a PR announcement or whatever. So I find that the societal attention driven by this hype, for example, I think nuclear is a great idea, but it's also overhyped relative to its magnitude, even though I think it is a good idea. So a lot of things like that. But in terms of businesses, a lot of the applications to be built in the future will be specific to your business. Maybe to share some examples, my team AI Fund, we work with a lot of large corporates, but we do things like use AI to route ships to make them 10% more fuel efficient, or cross-border trade, using AI to smooth out the paperwork for a cross-border trade so you don't have goods stuck at the border for multiple weeks, or government compliance paperwork, or to review privacy policies, or for AI medical diagnosis. So a lot of these are verticalized applications with access to specific company or industry's data. So for most of you, get your employees to use Gen AI or give them a productivity boost. But the other important thing to do would be to figure out what are the applications of AI that are relevant to your business and that use your data, and then find a way to build it. And actually, my team at AI Fund, we found that when we work with businesses on brainstorming, it's not uncommon for companies to come up with 100, 200, sometimes even more ideas. And then there's actually a lot of work to prioritize, make build versus buy decisions, and then execute on these projects. It can be really valuable, even though they don't get the hype that the technology layer companies often do.
And you hit on a couple things that I think are really important and that often get missed. I feel like a lot of people, when they think about generative AI, they still default to typing into ChatGPT and asking it to do my job. And to me, there's two problems with that. One is they're using a very general purpose tool, so they're not using their business data. Because to me, even if you're going to use something as broad as ChatGPT, as long as you upload some data, you can get some really good results. And the second thing is it's not tied into a specific task or business process. Where are companies from the folks you talk to and see in the process of doing what you're talking about, of really looking at, because again, the example you give, if you can make your shipping route 10% more fuel efficient, I mean, that would have huge benefits. You can make it 1% more efficient, you're probably talking a huge environmental impact. But just typing, hey, ChatGPT, how do I make my routes more efficient, isn't going to get you there.
By the way, we actually, Bearing AI, led by Dylan Carl, we actually save each ship about $500,000 in fuel costs per year with AI. So, and it's interesting, and I feel like, but there are a lot of these industries that, I think are incredibly sexy and exciting, but the broader public does not. And frankly, I think it's great. We've been doing this shipping thing for years already, and we even talk about it publicly, but, because it's not hot and sexy and exciting, we don't have 100 Silicon Valley engineers trying to rebuild this in the dorm room. And so we've been doing this for years with, a little bit of competition, but much less compared to the consumer AI applications. But to answer Ina's question of where we are, many companies are in the early stages. And maybe to share with you some best practices, right? So large companies are typically slower than small startups at trying things out, for good reason, because you can't afford to have a random engineer ship something that damages your revenue or your brand or just does something awful to your customer data or something. But what I've seen, and I've been in the large corporate side, right? I've led AI teams in Google and Baidu. What I've seen is that when companies have too much protective DNA and every innovation needs marketing review, legal review, PR review, ethics review, then it just takes forever to do anything. So what I see smart companies doing is set up sandboxes to let your teams innovate and try things out very quickly, but with no risk of shipping it or security leak or anything that causes harm. So I actually direct my teams build software that is unreliable, unsecure, just build a prototype, but don't ship it. Build it for internal testing only, and that creates a new engine for invention. And one of the reasons why I spend a lot of time on the corporate innovation process is AI-assisted coding is also changing the game for how we innovate. It turns out, if you look at software development, I think of a few buckets of software activities, including building quick and dirty prototypes, to building enterprise-grade software for the first time, to maintaining legacy software. And if you look at studies by McKinsey and others, they seem to suggest that for tasks like maintaining legacy software or building enterprise-grade software for the first time, AI-assisted coding is great. It'll give you maybe a 30 to 50% productivity boost or something, right? Don't take the numbers too seriously, but it's great. 30 to 50% boost is huge. But in these process of software, where I see AI-assisted coding being a game changer is prototyping, because now you can build a quick and dirty prototype in hours that used to take people like me like weeks or even months. And what this means is I see businesses able to go, you know what, let's get an engineer to build this over the weekend. We'll see what happens. In fact, you can even say, you know what, with 20 ideas, let's prototype them all. And if 18 of them die and 2 survive, that's fine. So this gives a new mechanism for reinvention. But part of the trick to empower your teams to do that is you cannot force every engineer wanting to do something to go through like a 9-month review process. And so set the internal mechanisms to brainstorm ideas, surface them, prioritize them, and execute a lot of them in parallel. This is becoming an important new mechanism for invention in companies.
And you're talking about this gain in coding. A lot of people, it's one of the areas that's benefited the most earliest from generative AI is coding. I've seen a lot of people take the attitude, oh man, you spent the last 10 years as an industry saying, learn to code, everyone should learn to code, and now that AI is great at it. We shouldn't have learned to code, or we shouldn't learn to code. I know you have a different view. Why should people still learn to code?
Yeah, so it turns out in the future, one of the most important skills for people in almost pretty much any profession is the ability to tell a computer exactly what you want it to do so they will do it for you. Computers become an incredibly powerful force. And in fact, I know a lot of people are fearful, will AI take my job or something? And to people feeling that way, I say, learn to code, take control of it so that you can be one of the masters of the computer to make it do what you want. And it turns out that people that know how to code are getting a massive productivity boost from Gen AI, whereas people that don't know how to code are getting a small a little bit. And what I'm seeing now, and I think will happen for the foreseeable future, is if you don't know how to code, AI-assisted coding is, helpful, but almost all the time you hit a wall that you cannot get past. So people that understand how computers work, that know how to code, are able to use this much more effectively. And in fact, another interesting trend I'm seeing is the cost of software development is already falling a little bit, and I think it will fall much more in the future. So some examples from my team at DeepLearning.AI. My finance person, built an app to monitor international exchange rates. This is a finance person, right? Not a software engineer. To flag to her when, various dollars or whatever, do whatever, so she could manage international accounts better. I have a reporter on my team that, used to write for various prestigious magazines. Just this week, he demoed code that he had written, check into GitHub if you know what that is, to scrape RSS feeds, to scrape news feeds, to flag to him when there's an article that he should maybe consider, make sure to cover in our things. So I'm seeing people from all walks of life learn to code and able to use it for their job functions that are not software engineering. And previously, it was uneconomical to build these things. I could not hire a software engineer for software engineering salaries to build these applications to make one person's workflow a little bit more efficient. But with the cost of building simple apps and prototypes lower, it is now economical. But the trick is to actually make it work and to be good at it, you actually do need to learn a little bit of how to code. I think Ina said, it turns out that with Gen AI, a little bit of coding knowledge now goes a long way. So it's very helpful to get that, at least that little bit of coding knowledge.
Well, hopefully my basic on the Apple II will come in handy. We're going to talk more. Andrew's convinced me I need to update my coding skills. We've been talking a lot about the company layer and kind of the what we should do as sort of business leaders, but I want to look at the societal level. One of the things you wrote about in the last couple of weeks that really caught my attention was around geoengineering. And I don't think it's fashionable this year at Davos to talk about a planet, but I still think it's the one planet we all live on, and we might want to make it livable. Talk about what you were using AI to do. Geoengineering, for those who don't know, most people think we're past the point where we can just curb emissions. We're going to have to do something to decarbonize, and talk about what you've seen and what you're looking into.
So for the last few years, I've been trying to use AI to address global warming, see what we can do. And so it turns out that the 1.5 degree Paris Agreement goal, that's dead. There's no plausible path that will keep warming to 1.5 degrees with an asterisk, which is without geoengineering. It looks almost certain we'll blow past 2 degrees and most likely end up with 2.5, maybe 2.6, 2.7 degrees if we don't hit any tipping points. If we hit a tipping point, then we may be looking at a 3.5 degree world that our children will grow up in, which would be, frankly, pretty catastrophic. So I think the only solution that I know of to avoid, let's say even 2.5 degrees is geoengineering. It turns out that if you spray reflective particles into the atmosphere, then if we reflect 1% of sunlight back out into space, our planet is albedo, reflects 30% of sunlight back into space anyway. So if we increase the reflectivity by about 1%, that will buy us an extra 1 degree Celsius of cooling. And that's the only path in my mind to keep us at 1.5 degrees Celsius. So over the last few years, I've been working on AI climate modeling to understand the impacts of geoengineering, model local impacts as well, what happened to rainfall patterns. It turns out if with a cooler planet, there's less evaporation, and so less rain, and so there actually will be less water, which could be good or bad depending on the region. Is it flooding or is it drought? So to build AI climate models to understand that, and over the last couple of years, I have come to the point of view that there are very few. I think there are no other good solutions left if we want to keep the planet at 1.5 degrees. So I think this is something we should take seriously. And I feel like this is important. I feel like Davos is actually an excellent place to have this conversation. As Eden said, this is not a popular topic at WEF this year, but I hope that we can gain momentum to do this thing, because I think we are actually literally out of options at this point.
So I don't want to end there. I do want us to have that discussion. It's vitally important that we do. We only have about 30 seconds left. I want you to suggest one thing that people can do, and it's a softball here because I know you're still executive chair at Coursera. a lot of the classes that people are taking on AI. If you could recommend one class, what would it be?
Actually, the fastest growing class 2 years ago was Generative AI for Everyone, which I teach. But I would say training and education is important. And maybe to those of you in large corporations, this is an excellent time to build. Despite all the hype up that AI is expensive, it's expensive to build foundation models, but my team at AI Fund, we budget $55,000 to get to working prototype to try to tackle an application, and sometimes we kill it. So we wasted $55,000, which is not great, but we'll survive. But the upside is enormous. McKinsey, I think, had a study showing that companies that invest in venture building deliver much better returns than companies that don't. And with AI technology that has newly made a lot of new applications possible, this is a great time to go back, get your teams to learn to code, get your teams to learn about Gen AI, and then set up the internal processes or have your ideas, your team ideas to experiment and build. And I think the upside will be huge.
Well, thank you so much. Unfortunately, we're going to have to leave it there. I do want to thank Qualcomm for making this space available. And as they used to say on TV when I was growing up, and now a word from our sponsor. I'm inviting up Kristen.
All right, how's everyone doing? Are we awake this morning? I'm Kristen Burkhalter. I'm an Executive Vice President at Axios, and I am thrilled to be having this conversation with Liz and Tony, who is an Executive Vice President and the Chief Customer Experience Officer at Cisco. Thanks for joining Axios, Liz.
Thanks for having me here.
That was a tough one to follow with Andrew, but I feel confident.
By the way, I did take his course. I would highly recommend it. The class that he teaches, and a number of my teams have done that as well.
She told me that backstage, so I know she's been watching. Take those notes. All right, Liz, you have an incredible, impressive title. Let's start with, what do you do at Cisco?
Yeah. So I have the pleasure of being the Chief Customer Experience Officer at Cisco. It's a team that, think about it in very simple terms, is a lot of customers buy our technology. What we work on, how do we help them maximize the value of the investments that they're making? And so the team covers everything from being part of the selling, but also designing things like the architecture, the technology architecture, helping the customers adopt our technology, expand it to new use cases, and customer support as well. So through the life cycle, the focus of our team is very much on how do we make sure that we deliver our customers' outcomes with as little risk as possible. And a big focus for me in terms of day-to-day is around, one is how do we put the customer at the center of everything that we do? And it's not just a campaign, it's a commitment in everything that we do. And how do we push further and further into AI? Because when I think about customer experience, it's the one place where it's like rich with use cases, but it also helps reduce the cognitive load for our teams. Mm-hmm. I mean, in any of the jobs, it's a 20,000 person strong team. In any of the jobs that the team does, and it's a great team, it's like there's so much friction in what they do every day. And we absolutely see AI in terms of helping reduce that friction.
I think we're going to dig into a couple of those. Yep. So last year, we were all sitting here, most of us were sitting here, and everyone was talking about Gen AI. And maybe even before Gen AI has even come into full fruition, we're now flipping to Agentic AI, the topic of our event here. Is this hype, in your opinion?
Is it hype? No. Will it take a long time before it becomes a reality? Yes. If I look at customer experience, I feel like Agentic has an opportunity to transform how we do customer services in a big way. But what it also does is it exacerbates some of the current problems and it creates new ones as well. So what do I mean by that? So at Cisco, we did this thing called the AI Readiness Index. And only 13% of our enterprise customers are ready to adopt AI. So the conversations that we're having here, and I think Andrew touched on that as well. So the conversations that we're talking about in terms of Gen AI and Agentic, they're outpacing the reality of where we're all ready to kind of adopt it. And when we think about the issues that we've been talking about with just AI in general, around transparency, our customers are asking us about, okay, this is the output from the prompts, help me understand the explainability in terms of how'd you get there. those just get even more exacerbated with agentic, because with agentic, you're talking about now like an AI agent not just helping assist something and augment something. It's like you're talking about your intern is now actually graduating to a full-time job. Like talking to your customers about taking action. And I do think that, so should we have the conversation? Absolutely, because agentic is coming. It's just that it's going to take us a few years before it gets here.
And you're living and breathing this every day.
Yeah.
But let's get a little practical at the customer level. Explain to us what is different from the experience to the deliverable.
So maybe I can take an example of customer support. So say you call Cisco today and you have a trouble ticket. We do have AI agents that work in the background. They pull your account history. They pull like what are the products in their environment. We have release notes for these products, and they help the human in terms of being able to kind of handle the issue, but be able to find the root cause analysis as quickly as possible. Because we want to be able to solve customers' problems as quickly as possible. And that's today. So we have AI agents that help with assisting customers. For complex issues, we have things in terms of summarization. So think about, you're on the phone with customer support, and they go, let me hand you to somebody else. And how many times do you have to explain the same thing all over again? It's very annoying. So this is what Gen AI does beautifully in terms of summarizations. So it's assisting our teams who hand over, from one to the other, especially if it's a complex issue that you don't want to ask the customer all over again in terms of what did you call for? So that's great. With us, moving to Gen AI and more agentic, think about in terms of where the task where an AI agent is not just helping with the task, it's actually completing the task and taking action as well. And so we're talking about addressing issues in real time. And I've been at Cisco 25 years. 25 years ago, we talked about this vision of predictive, like being able to tell you in your environment what could potentially go wrong. It could be a performance bottleneck. It could be a security issue. I think Agentic AI has the ability to deliver on that vision. So think about from a customer experience standpoint, you're thinking about your environments being much more resilient and secure. That's I would say is a huge value.
It's exciting, lots to learn. But I think it leads me to my next question, and I'm assuming there's a lot of leaders in this room. What is your advice for them? Because in this age of AI, how do we keep experiences human-centric still? There's a lot of benefits to what that agent can do, but as leaders, they're also hearing from their stakeholders things like AI is going to take our job. So what is your advice for this room of leaders?
Yeah. So I would say is if you think about customer experience and anything where any of the jobs where you're at touch points where you're interfacing with customers, is that there's a human part around empathy, around emotional intelligence that you're not going to get from the AI agents. All right, so the question is, how do you balance it in where AI is awesome in customer experience? Because when I think about us, very people intensive. We have 40 plus years of data, very repeatable workflows. AI is perfect for being able to help. But the humans provide like 40 years of knowledge base, empathy, and even sometimes, even in the lower risk use cases, there are people who just want to talk to a human. Because the technology is not advanced to a point where it's still a little bit, if I could use the term kludgy, where you can still know you're kind of talking to a bot out there. So I think for leaders, it's like balancing out in terms of this balance of the machine and the human to maintain that emotional intelligence, that knowledge base. I would say in terms of do jobs go away? I'd say some, yes, likely, but when you look at the history of technology, I think if we've been in the industry long enough, and I have, a lot of it is about rebalancing versus complete replacement.
Okay, I'm going to end on one fun thing because we're almost out of time. I could sit here forever. Give us in this audience a peek under the hood, something that you're thinking about, something that you and Cisco are thinking about as we head into very fast 2025.
Okay. A quick fun thing, actually. We're taking bets in terms of when these AI agents as interns, actually we can graduate them into full-time jobs. We think it's about 24 months for them to take on tasks completely. Taking on a full-time role, the general bet is more than 36 months. But some of the what we're excited about in Cisco is most of you likely know us around, we build silicon, we build optics, we build systems that power these workloads. We're actually moving up the stack into agents and applications. Kind of our AI defense is all about securing how, where you're identifying where your AI assets are, understanding the risk, being able to build capability to mitigate that risk, and we're big users of it as well. So we're excited about all of that for 2025. I think being in this industry for this long, I think it's fair to say that this is one where I'm super excited about the technology, balancing that with the risk. But it's also something where I feel like I know something, and then 2 days later, it's changed. So it's really about you're learning every day. And I haven't had that in a long time.
That's important. Well, I'll end where I started. You have a very interesting, impressive, cool job. Liz, thank you for joining us today. Thank you all for being here. We have one more interview, so don't go anywhere. I'm going to pass it over to Alison Snyder from Axios.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. I'm Alison Snyder. I'm one of the managing editors at Axios. Thank you all for being here. I'm joined on stage by May Habib. Thank you for being here. Hi. She's the CEO and co-founder of Writer, which is a generative AI tool platform for enterprises. I want to start big picture with you, if that's okay. In the past few weeks, some tech leaders have made some pretty public predictions that are, I think, setting expectations very high for what's to come in this year. Where do you fall in that? Should we expect big things?
Yeah, absolutely. I think most people by the end of the year, if they've worked at a enterprise that is using AI, will have built their own first app or agent. So I see the acceleration happening pretty fast. Palmyra, our series of reasoning models, has gotten pretty good at task orchestration and execution across third-party systems. So we're starting to see really sophisticated agents getting built. Our customers are mostly Fortune 500 and Global 2000 companies, financial services, healthcare, CPG, retail. So this is high-stakes stuff. With sophisticated folks at the helm, and the AI is very, very good.
So you started Writer pre-ChatGPT. I'm curious, what's something that's happened since then that you just didn't foresee?
Yeah, when we started Writer 4 years ago, we thought we stripped out the decoder from encoder decoders, and we had something that would disrupt the writing space. What I didn't foresee 4 years ago was natural language would be the interface to intelligence, and we'd have software that could write software. And so the things that we are building now with those same decoders, albeit much more powerful, are incredibly transformational. And I did not 4 years ago think we'd be disrupting the entire SaaS industry by enabling people to essentially build, custom software as fast as filling out a Google form.
I just interviewed a little while ago Demis Hassabis from DeepMind, and he was talking about how surprised he was that large language models, that you could actually learn language. There was, for a long time there was this belief that it was sort of innate and coded in our brains in some ways. So I thought that was pretty fascinating. So AI agents, that autonomously make decisions are sort of this next big buzzy phase of AI. What are you all doing on AI agents, and how big is the gap between sort of what they can do and their promise?
Yeah, the gap is not a product or technology gap. The biggest gap that we see is business process. So, you really don't want agents making too many decisions, right? What we see as really the bottleneck here is getting people and companies and teams to really align on what is our process? What is our exception handling for something? What is the happy path? What do we want the human approval and control and contribution workflow to look like? And the tech building blocks to execute on that exist today, but the big body of work and where there's truly a skills gap is that. And let me give you an example. We work with a top investment bank that is automating all the pitch book creation in their company, which is exciting because, incredibly manual process. You have a big industry event and you're putting together 50 to 60 company profiles, and people are staying up all night to do this. And each profile you're pulling from FactSet and Yahoo Finance and S&P Global and the company's website and like all their PR, et cetera. And you can automate that. But like, what happens to the approval workflow when you get actually like 50 at once to approve versus having them trickle out over a few weeks? Like, there's a lot of change management around, getting all of the data access and how we orchestrate and what the approval mechanism looks like. And that is a very human effort, and it requires both executives from the top saying, yeah, you're not just going to do this off the side of your desk. Like, you are dedicated. It is your job to make this AI transformation happen. And then also for, folks whose job it is to be brought into that and to see, an evolution of where their own job goes, right? You as the junior banker, you're not going to go to the meeting, not like sleep off, staying up 3 nights in a row, right? So, really getting both that kind of bottoms up excitement, because the business logic, all that exception handling, it sits in people's brains. We've got to encode that into the agent, right? But then also, what does my job become if I've created so much automation and augmentation?
Yeah, do you encounter resistance, or do you hear, stories of resistance encountered in terms of those workers who will be using these tools? Or
it is so rare, honestly. Like, people are so hungry to get updated tooling and more exciting stuff. I just think they've been like drastically underwhelmed by the quality of what they have seen, but they're hungry for good tooling.
Where do you see the biggest use cases or the sort of biggest return of investment on the Agentic AI?
Yeah, great question. We work with a major DTC retailer that has automated a lot of their return processing through Agentic AI. And what's great about this is it really is true orchestration, where AI does self-orchestrate and decide, but within narrow confines. So I think it presents a really good blueprint for how to do this. So about a third of their inquiries are due to, hey, I need to return this. Either I don't have a printer, I need a label, like this is the wrong size, do you have a suggestion for a different product to replace XYZ, et cetera. And so their agent is orchestrated across kind of 3 main areas of business logic. First, being able to like bring in the multiple sources. Not everything goes into their ticketing system of a request, and then being able to classify it, like what does this person actually want? And this is so great for the kind of reasoning capabilities that AI is good at now. Then it is hey, what is our business process for this thing? And you want a way where that can be updated, right? So like, we no longer allow 30-day returns. It's now a 15-day return. Like, if you got to put in a Jira ticket for somebody to update that prompt versus being able to do it yourself, that's a real bottleneck to scaling something like this. So, Writer is a full stack generative AI solution for apps and agents, so we make it much easier for business people to control that kind of logic. And then it's the actual execution. So like, what are the third-party systems that I got to connect to, whether it's sending somebody an email or, messaging them back via push notification? How can I actually use AI to orchestrate across those tools versus a human needing to go in and really just like, duplicate something, right, across another platform, which is, hopefully not how we're going to be spending most of, our jobs.
Are there industries or sectors where you're just like, it's a no-go for now?
So we work with some of the largest healthcare payers in the country, and some of them are, in the news quite a bit. And, there's a lot of opportunity for AI to take out admin costs in healthcare without being, a replacement for human diagnoses decisions or an intermediary, for that like very important last mile human-human connection. So, it is like, at a very high level, there can be executive resistance to really just the perception of using AI. But when you really dig in with people and help them understand, how much overhead there is that can be automated, that frees up these really bogged down clinicians to actually spend time with patients. So I really see that as much more fraught. But in financial services, like, we have figured out how to get folks comfortable with how to represent investment decision advice, audit trails to FINRA if they are audited, in that, like, you're able to see what somebody asked and what writer returned, and what that citation trail was. Did they click in to see the citations? And that is the kind of observability that is required for folks to get comfortable. But I think the big takeaway is that the most profitable, the most powerful, the most competitive companies are the ones who are investing the most and getting the most out of it. And there's still a very, very big gap between them and everybody else. We're lucky to be partnered with lots of folks who are very avant-garde on this, but there's still a big gap between the folks who are at square 10 and the folks who are still trying to figure out how to get to square 1.
So I wanted to ask you about something that's in the news a lot recently. And so we're seeing some companies that are turning away from their diversity initiatives. And I'm curious, how much more likely is bias to go unaddressed if the diversity of people isn't represented in these systems? Isn't represented in the people building these systems?
It's a good question. We sell to enterprise, and there's almost no big customer we're talking to who isn't actually asking us about the carbon footprint of our training pipeline and our models. If you are L'Oreal, if you're Goldman, if you're Accenture, like, it doesn't matter what mainstream thinks or has shifted on kind of woke, anti-woke, et cetera. Like, that's actually become pretty ingrained in how you do business. So on the bias front, all of the enterprise RFPs and questionnaire include that. So we are very transparent. Professor Percy at Stanford has done a great job. They've published a foundation model transparency index. We are the most transparent closed source model. We do open source a bunch of stuff, but our leading edge models are closed source. So you can actually, if you care, ask your AI providers around the inherent biases in their models. There is a bias index that, like, you should, as a LLM provider, be publishing to your customers. We do. And then we use synthetic data to actually augment and address the biases that are in the data. We do use synthetic data pretty widely across all of our models, but it's been a pretty good weapon to address the inherent biases in just the open source data sets.
Because DEI is a pretty consumer-driven, consumers want products that serve them, right, or that work for them. So, political backlash is really strong. So you're not worried that diversity efforts will won't survive today's politics?
No, I don't think so. I think this is a wave that will pass.
What should we be paying attention to that we're not?
That's a great question. I think learning to use AI truly, like, in your day-to-day to give you leverage, it's like relearning how to read and write. And I do think, there's lip service to AI literacy, et cetera. That's like basic, like 2022 table stakes type of stuff. I think it's IDC or Gartner published a stat this month around, by 2026, 25% of employees will have built an agent at work, which is so exciting. And I hope it's 50%. I hope it's 75%. I was at CES 2 weeks ago, and I asked my EA we was going to like a 200-person dinner, like kind of like a little bigger than this. And I was like, which customers are going to be there? Which prospects? Who should I be talking to at this dinner? And she's like, oh, I just got the lookbook. It's like literally 300-page PDF. And I'm like, Carissa, please do not go through that. Build an app for it. And she built an app that she's used all week for this event too, where she can upload a PDF. It takes everybody's name, sticks it in a spreadsheet, gets their LinkedIn profile, checks Salesforce, figures out if they're a customer or they're a prospect, and comes up with a list of who I should meet. And she's a pretty smart EA, but the goal is for everybody to be able to kind of create this tooling. I loved what Andrew said earlier around, you'd never hire an engineer to kind of help people do stuff like that. But now, you've got these tools where you literally can describe to AI, right, what you want. And if you're somebody who's really good at describing things, right, and then evaluating whether the output is good, then you're going to get very good at that skill. And we are democratizing what it means to be a builder. We're really removing a huge bottleneck that has kept a lot of underrepresented people in tech out of these like very lucrative building and engineering jobs. So I don't think we talk about that as much. I don't think we are as optimistic as we can or should be around how much human potential gets locked up in us having to click around 800 times a day in all of our tools that are built for like the generic average use case average person, and we can really come up with just much more highly personalized tool experiences to get our work done.
I think that's a great place to end. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Alison.
This is all time we have. Thank you, everyone in the audience, for joining us. There are events here throughout the week, so we have QR codes around the room, so you can scan them, find out all the details, and we hope to see you back. So thank you all.